The message came late on a quiet Sunday morning, 3 weeks before my mother's wedding. It wasn't an invitation, it was an execution. A cold, calculated dismissal written in a few perfectly chosen words. My mother, Carol, was getting married, for the third time, and as always, she wanted it to be the crowning performance of her life. Every dress fitting, every floral arrangement, every post she'd already scheduled for social media. It was all designed to show the world that she had wanted everything. But her text cut through that illusion with surgical precision. "Darling, I've had to make some cuts. I'm afraid your new position is simply too distracting. We need this day to be about me, not your success. It's nothing personal." It was, of course, the most personal rejection I had ever received. My own mother had just uninvited me from her wedding because my success stole too much attention. She didn't want me there. Not because I had done something wrong, but because I'd done something right. She wanted to shine alone, and she wanted me to help her pay for it. That was the moment I decided that when the spotlight finally found her, it wouldn't glorify her. It would expose her. If you've ever been the scapegoat in your family, if you've ever had your accomplishments twisted into threats, or your kindness used as a weapon against you, this story is for you. Hit that like button if you believe silence is the sharpest kind of power, and subscribe. Because this is the story of what happens when a narcissist finally meets her match. My name is Sarah, and my entire life was written by the roles my mother assigned us. For her, everything was theater, and we were her supporting cast. My existence was never something to celebrate. It was something to compare. I was the scapegoat. Too logical, too quiet, too unwilling to worship her reflection. I didn't fit her perfect picture. My older sister Lisa was the golden child. Pretty, charming, and endlessly devoted to Mom's version of truth. In Carol's story, Lisa was the graceful success, the one who married well, stayed nearby, and made her look good. I, on the other hand, was the difficult one, the daughter who moved 3 states away, built a career Mom couldn't even pronounce, and made a name for herself without her help. I worked in corporate financial compliance, a field my mother once called paperwork for people with no social life. But that paperwork had given me a master's degree, financial independence, and a professional understanding of exactly where people like Carol and her fiancé Victor cut corners. I didn't know it yet, but that knowledge would soon become my sharpest weapon. Victor, her newest project, was everything she thought screamed status. Handsome, foreign, well-dressed, and just mysterious enough to make her friends jealous. He talked about international trade as if he ran an empire, though I suspected he barely managed his own bills. Their wedding, her third, was planned as a 3-day spectacle. The reception alone cost more than my first condo. And the honeymoon? A 2-week luxury escape to the Maldives. It was all built for show. Filtered, hashtagged, and wrapped in a bow of fragile perfection. 3 months before the big event, I hit a career milestone. I was promoted to director at a major investment firm, earning a 6-figure bonus and a feature in a national business magazine. I should have seen it coming. The moment that article went live, the congratulations I got from my mother turned sour. Her voice on the phone dripped with jealousy hidden under honey. "Oh, Sarah, you sound so busy," she said. "Are you even going to have time for family things anymore? You know, not everyone enjoys being overshadowed." She wasn't asking, she was warning. The calls grew more frequent, each one sharpened by resentment. "You'll have to be careful at the wedding," she teased once. "It's Mom's day, not your victory lap." And then, that text came, the one that disinvited me. I stared at it for a long time, reading and rereading, each word cutting deeper. It wasn't just rejection. It was erasure. It was her saying, "You don't fit in my story anymore." But just when I thought she couldn't go lower, she proved me wrong. 2 days later, another message appeared. Short, heartless, transactional. "Since you won't be attending, and you know how expensive the honeymoon is, It's customary for guests who can't make it to send a substantial gift. Victor and I have already upgraded our Maldives suite, so if you could contribute $5,000, I'll know you're not bitter about being left out. My fingers tightened around my phone until the plastic creaked. It wasn't just cruel. It was parasitic. She had turned my exclusion into a business opportunity. For years, I had known my mother's love was conditional. But this was the first time it came with an actual price tag. I looked at my bank account. Healthy, full, flush with my recent bonus. I could have sent the money and forgotten about it. But the thought of paying for her fantasy honeymoon while I sat at home, uninvited and humiliated, made my blood go cold. That familiar voice of self-doubt whispered in my head. Maybe she's right. Maybe you're just money to her. Maybe you're the problem. But that whisper didn't last long. It twisted, hardened, turned into something far more powerful. Fury. Focused, icy fury. For 24 hours, I wrestled with it. A part of me wanted to send the money just to prove I wasn't bitter, to deny her the satisfaction of calling me jealous. But the rational side of me screamed louder. Don't pay the ransom. I finally called Lisa, desperate for someone to see my side, or at least hear me out. She's asking for $5,000, I said, trying to laugh but choking instead. For a wedding I'm not even allowed to attend. Lisa sighed, her tone drenched in that golden child patience I'd grown to hate. Oh, Sarah, don't make this a big deal. It's Mom. She knows you can afford it. Just send the money, write a nice card, and be happy for her. Don't make waves. It's her last chance at happiness. That phrase, don't make waves, was the soundtrack of my entire childhood. It was what kept Mom comfortable and me invisible. It was the motto that protected her ego and suffocated my voice. I hung up the phone and stared at the quiet apartment I'd built for myself through years of grit and sleepless nights. Every inch of it was proof that I had fought my way out of her shadow. For the first time in years, I realized something simple and true. I didn't owe Carol anything. Not my silence. Not my money. Not my obedience. I looked around my apartment. The product of my relentless ambition. I had fought for every square foot of it. I had worked through countless sleepless nights to build a career where I controlled the data, controlled the risk, and controlled my own destiny. Carol wanted me to voluntarily surrender my power and pay her for the privilege. That's when the decision crystallized. I wouldn't pay the ransom. I wouldn't fight her with tears. I would fight her with the only thing she truly understood: consequence. Carol believed my professional success was merely a title on a card, a shallow threat. I needed to prove to her that my career was the key to controlling her carefully constructed reality. She wanted her wedding to be perfect, untouchable, and defined by the honeymoon. That I realized was the perfect fragile target. I walked over to my desk, my spine straightening for the first time in days. The pain hadn't vanished, but it had been converted into a cold, diamond-hard resolve. Carol wanted me to feel the sting of exclusion. I would ensure she felt the blinding public shock of exposure. I pulled out my secure work phone. I texted the only person who could help me navigate the legal and financial murkiness of an international target, Daniel Peterson. Daniel was a senior partner in our firm's forensic risk assessment department, and a close friend. He lived for finding the hidden dirt in global transactions. The text was simple, professional, and devoid of emotion. Daniel, high priority. Completely off the books. I need an emergency deep dive profile on Victor Groom's last name. Focus on international assets and tax compliance specifically relating to travel to the Maldives. Find the hole. I was no longer Sarah, the hurt daughter. I was Sarah, the compliance director, and I was about to audit my mother's fiancé. Daniel's response was immediate and focused. He knew my request was personal, but respected my professional approach. I need access to specific databases, Sarah. Give me 48 hours, he wrote back. Those 2 days were agonizing, yet electrifying. I continued my normal work schedule, but underneath my mind was racing, building the various scenarios. I realized how much I knew about the hidden world of wealth, the world Carol so desperately wanted to inhabit. I knew the difference between tax avoidance and genuine compliance negligence. I was looking for the latter. When Daniel finally called, his voice was quiet, respectful, and slightly impressed. "Sarah, your instincts are incredibly sharp," he stated. "Victor is cleaner than most. But I found one thing. His international trade company made a sizable unreported asset transfer of about $150,000 to an offshore shell entity 6 months ago. It's structured to be just under the threshold for automatic red flagging, but it's visible. If you know where to look. It's sloppy, but not necessarily a crime." He paused, letting the data sink in. Here's the kicker, though. When he filed his travel documents for the Maldives trip, he had to declare any high value assets he was transporting or any assets tied to his travel fund. He failed to declare this specific offshore bank account. It's a minor, easily corrected compliance issue technically, but if someone were to anonymously tip off Airport Customs and Border Protection (CBP) about the undeclared asset and the suspicious transfer right before his flight, he'd be flagged for secondary screening and potential detention for questioning. My heart didn't pound. It froze with cold, focused satisfaction. This was perfect. The issue wasn't big enough to permanently derail Victor's life or mine through legal trouble. But it was just big enough to derail the one thing Carol could not compromise on. The flawless illusion of her new glamorous life, the Maldives honeymoon. She wanted $5,000 for her suite upgrade. I was about to buy her a complete cancellation. The revenge had to be surgical, non-traceable, and perfectly timed. I crafted the anonymous tip-off email meticulously. I used triple layers of VPNs, burner accounts registered in a different country, and wrote the email using precise bureaucratic language that made it look like it came from an internal whistleblower or a competing firm's intelligence. I attached the relevant transaction summaries Daniel found, ensuring the information was detailed and credible enough to trigger a highly mandatory review. The plan was set. The wedding was a Saturday night. The flight was 2:01 a.m. Sunday morning. I would send the email exactly 3 hours before the flight at 11 p.m. 3 hours was the golden hour. Enough time for the tip to land on the desk of a lot night agent, be cross-referenced with Victor's recently filed travel documents, and trigger the flag before he could check in and get to the gate, but too late for him to cancel or change his documentation without massive public chaos. The day of the wedding arrived. I was miles away, sitting in my apartment, watching the ceremony unfold on Lisa's constant frantic social media stories. I saw Carol draped in lace and diamonds glowing with manufactured happiness. Lisa beaming proudly as the beautiful golden child. I felt nothing. No sadness, no anger. Only their relentless cold anticipation of the clock ticking down to my chosen moment of consequence. The ceremony was long over. Their reception was deafeningly loud with forced cheer. Lisa's post showed Carol and Victor dancing, kissing, and toasting their perfect future. Everything was proceeding flawlessly, exactly as Carol had planned. The final hour approached. The family and guests were escorted outside for the grand departure. Carol and Victor, waving from a classic car that would take them straight to the airport for their late-night first-class flight to paradise. The illusion was complete. I looked at the time, 10:55 p.m., 5 minutes to go. I sat at my laptop staring at the send button. This was the point of no return. I was about to drop a digital bomb on my mother's perfect life. My hand hovered over the trackpad. I remembered Carol's text. "I'll know you're not bitter." At 11 p.m. precisely, I clicked. The anonymous tip, complete with the undeclared asset information and transaction logs, vanished into the ether, untraceable. I waited. The silence was agonizing. Did the email go to spam? Was the agent on duty lazy? I sat rigid in my chair, unable to look away from the clock as the minutes bled toward the flight time. At 1:30 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was Lisa, the golden child, calling me for the first time in months. She was crying, her voice thin, sharp, and hysterical, and the background was loud with shouting and the sterile echo of an airport terminal. "Sarah, you won't believe this. We're at the customs line. Victor is being detained. Customs pulled him." I took a slow, deliberate breath, letting the sound of her panic wash over me. "Detained? For what, Lisa?" I asked, my voice calm and low. "They're asking about some ancient, stupid financial thing. They took his passport. They're saying his entire international profile is flagged because of some undeclared asset and a suspicious trade history. Mom is screaming. Sarah screaming at the agents. She's hysterical. The flight leaves in 20 minutes. They won't let him go. I could hear the piercing sound of Carol's high-pitched, desperate shouting in the background. The sound of her perfect image cracking under pressure. The sight of her at the customs desk, powerless and shrieking, was the exact mental image I had engineered. Lisa, I said, maintaining my composure. It sounds like they're investigating something serious. Victor must have done something highly non-compliant. Tell Mom I was sad to miss the wedding. But I hope she enjoys her quiet night alone in the airport hotel room. Then I delivered the final crushing sentence, tying the whole scheme back to her original cruel demand. My voice was a monotone whisper of pure victory. And tell her that was my gift. Tell her I'm afraid luxury trips are simply too distracting from my schedule. I'll forward the $5,000 to my own savings account. I hung up. I didn't wait for her reply. The silence that followed was not lonely. It was triumphant. I didn't get the apology I deserved, but I got something far better. The undeniable public proof that my mother's fragile happiness was now subject to my invisible power. She wanted me to pay for her escape. I used my earned power to pay for her public failure. Victor spent 2 days being held for questioning. The authorities eventually cleared the minor compliance issue. But by then the honeymoon to the Maldives was completely lost. Carol was forced to spend the first week of her marriage stewing in a mediocre airport hotel, while Victor dealt with paperwork. The entire grand narrative of the wedding collapsed into a humiliating public story of financial complications. That revenge wasn't about money or violence. It was about validation. Carol tried to diminish me, to make me small, to make me apologize for achieving something real. She tried to profit from my exclusion by ruining the one thing she held sacred, her public image. It proved that the power she feared in me was real. The ultimate prize was the realization that I was no longer the scapegoat. I was the one who held the control. She had tried to make me pay for her wedding, and I used my skills to make her pay for her narcissism. What do you think about Carol's fate? Did she get what she deserved for banning her own daughter? Let me know in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe for more stories where the quiet sibling delivers the ultimate calculated revenge.